Standing in my driveway, keys to my brand new Porsche Cayenne trembling in my hand, I watched my parents' jaws drop through their car window. For 2 years, they had ignored my existence after I married Marcus against their wishes. No wedding attendance, no congratulations, complete radio silence. But now, seeing my luxury SUV gleaming in the afternoon sun, they suddenly remembered they had a daughter. What they did not know was that this car represented more than success. It was the beginning of their downfall, and I had every receipt to prove their true colors. Before we dive into this family revenge story, tell me where you're watching from. If you're ready to see how karma came full circle in the most unexpected way, smash that like button and subscribe, because this gets absolutely wild. Trust me, you won't believe what my parents did when they realized what they had lost, and what I was about to expose about them. My name is Seraphina, and 2 years ago, my world changed forever when I married the love of my life, Marcus Rodriguez. He was everything my parents despised, a hard-working construction foreman from a Mexican-American family, someone who had built his success from nothing. While my parents lived off their inherited wealth and looked down on anyone who actually worked for a living, Marcus had started his own construction company at 25 and was already making 6 figures by 30. The wedding day was supposed to be magical. I had sent my parents elegant invitations months in advance, hoping they would put aside their prejudices and celebrate with us. My mother, Patricia, had always been obsessed with status and appearances, while my father, Richard, was a closeted racist who smiled politely at Marcus during family dinners while making snide comments behind his back. When I announced our engagement, their true colors emerged. "You are throwing your life away," my mother had screamed during our last conversation. "That man is beneath you, Seraphina. What will people think? What will our country club friends say when they find out our daughter married some construction worker?" My father was even worse. "I will not have my family name associated with his kind," he had said with disgust. "If you marry him, you are no longer our daughter. We have worked too hard to build our reputation to have you destroy it with this ridiculous infatuation." I had tried reasoning with them, explaining how Marcus treated me like a queen, how he was building something real and meaningful, how he made me happier than I had ever been. But their minds were made up. They refused to attend the wedding and cut off all contact immediately afterward. The wedding was beautiful, despite their absence. Marcus's family welcomed me with open arms, treating me like the daughter they never had. His mother, Rosa, cried happy tears as she helped me into my dress, telling me in broken English how blessed they were to have me join their family. His father, Miguel, walked me down the aisle with such pride and love that I barely missed my own father's presence. But the silence from my parents hurt more than I cared to admit. No wedding gifts, no phone calls, no acknowledgement of holidays or birthdays. They had effectively erased me from their lives because I had chosen love over their approval. Meanwhile, Marcus and I thrived. His construction business exploded with new contracts, and I had landed my dream job as a marketing director for a tech startup. Within a year, we had saved enough to put a down payment on a beautiful house in an upscale neighborhood. We were building something real together, something my parents could never understand because they had never worked for anything in their lives. The breakthrough came when Marcus secured a massive contract to build a luxury hotel downtown. The project was worth over $2 million, and his company was finally established as a major player in the city's construction scene. We celebrated by finally purchasing the Porsche Cayenne I had always dreamed of, a stunning metallic silver beauty that cost $135,000. I was washing the car in our driveway on a Saturday morning when I noticed a familiar sedan creeping slowly down our street. My heart stopped when I realized it was my parents' car. They drove past once, then circled back, clearly taking in the sight of our beautiful house and expensive vehicle. That afternoon, my phone rang for the first time in 2 years. It was my mother. "Seraphina, darling," she said in that fake sweet voice I knew so well. "I was just driving through your neighborhood and thought I saw you. What a lovely home you have." The audacity was breathtaking. 2 years of complete silence, and now she wanted to chat because she had seen evidence of our success. "Hello, Mother," I replied coolly. "What do you want?" "Oh, sweetheart, do not be like that. We have missed you terribly. Perhaps it is time we all got together and worked things out. Family is so important. Do not you think?" I almost laughed. Family was important when I needed their support on my wedding day, but they had made their choice clear. Now they wanted back in because they could see we had money. "Is that so?" I said. "And what exactly has changed in the past 2 years?" There was a pause before she answered. "Well, we realize we may have been too hasty in our judgment. Marcus seems to be doing quite well for himself. We would love to have you both over for dinner soon." The conversation continued for 20 minutes, with my mother fishing for information about our finances, our house, our lifestyle. She complimented the neighborhood, asked about the Porsche, and even mentioned how impressive Marcus's business must be doing. When I hung up, Marcus found me sitting on our couch, staring at the phone in disbelief. "They want back in," I told him. "Now that they see we have money, suddenly they remember they have a daughter." Marcus sat down beside me and took my hand. "What do you want to do?" That was the moment everything crystallized for me. I realized this was not just about my parents being shallow and materialistic. This was about them showing their true character, and I finally had the power to expose them for who they really were. They had hurt me deeply, cut me off completely, and now they wanted to waltz back into my life like nothing had happened. But I was not the same naive girl they had dismissed 2 years ago. I was stronger, wiser, and I had learned something valuable about the difference between family and relatives. Family supports you unconditionally. Relatives show up when they think you have something to offer them. The phone calls started coming daily after that first conversation. My mother would call under the pretense of checking in, but every conversation somehow circled back to our financial situation. She asked about Marcus's business, our mortgage, my job, even the cost of our landscaping. My father eventually called too, his tone noticeably warmer than it had been in years. "Son," he said to Marcus during one awkward phone conversation, actually using the word he had previously refused to utter. "I hear business is booming for you. Perhaps we could meet for lunch and discuss some investment opportunities." The transformation was so obvious, it was almost comical. These were the same people who had told me Marcus was beneath our family, who had refused to even speak his name for 2 years. Now they were calling him son and talking about investment opportunities. But their sudden change of heart revealed something darker that I had suspected for years. My parents had always been users people who measured relationships by what they could gain from them. I started thinking back to my childhood, remembering how they had treated my friends based on their family's wealth, how they had dropped relationships with people who had fallen on hard times, how they had cultivated friendships only with those who could benefit them socially or financially. During one particularly revealing conversation with my mother, she let slip something that made my blood boil. "You know, darling," she said, "we have been telling everyone at the country club how proud we are of your success." Margaret Whitmore was so impressed when I mentioned Marcus's construction company. Her husband might have some projects that could use a good contractor. They were taking credit for our success. Not only had they abandoned me when I needed their support, but now they were using our achievements to boost their own social standing. They were telling people they were proud of me while conveniently omitting the part where they had disowned me for marrying Marcus. That night I sat down with Marcus and laid out a plan. "They think they can just slide back into our lives and take credit for what we have built," I said. "But they made their choice 2 years ago. They showed me exactly who they are, and I think it is time other people saw it too." Marcus was hesitant at first. He had grown up in a family where forgiveness was paramount, where family disagreements were worked out through conversation and compromise. But he also understood the depth of the hurt my parents had caused, and he trusted my judgment. "What are you thinking?" he asked. I pulled out my phone and showed him the dozens of text messages and voicemails my parents had left me over the past 2 weeks. Every single one mentioned our house, our cars, our apparent wealth. Not one asked how I was doing emotionally, whether I was happy, or acknowledged the pain they had caused by missing our wedding. "I want to invite them to dinner," I said. "But not just any dinner. I want to invite their entire social circle, all the country club friends they care so much about impressing. I want to give them exactly what they think they want, and then I want everyone to see who they really are." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. My parents were social climbers who valued appearances above everything else. They wanted to show off their successful daughter and son-in-law to their friends to take credit for our achievements. I would give them that opportunity, but on my terms. I spent the next week planning the perfect dinner party. I invited not just my parents, but 12 of their closest country club friends, the same people my mother had mentioned when bragging about our success. I hired a catering company, bought the finest wine, and prepared our home to look absolutely perfect. But I also prepared something else, a presentation. See, what my parents did not know was that I had kept every text message, every voicemail, every email from the past 2 years. I had documentation of their racist comments about Marcus, their threats to disown me, their complete radio silence during the most important moments of my life. I had proof of exactly how they had treated us, and I had screenshots of recent conversations where they tried to rewrite history. I also prepared a timeline of our actual achievements, showing how Marcus and I had built our success entirely without their help during a period when they had actively tried to sabotage our happiness by cutting us off completely. Marcus was nervous about the plan. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked the night before the dinner party. "Once you expose them like this, there is no going back. They will never forgive you." I looked at him, this incredible man who had loved me unconditionally while my own parents treated me like a disposable commodity, and I felt completely certain about my decision. "They made their choice when they abandoned me for loving you," I said. "They made their choice when they decided our relationship was worth less than their reputation. And they made their choice when they came crawling back only because they saw dollar signs. I am not destroying our relationship. I am just making sure everyone sees what they destroyed 2 years ago." The guest list was perfect. Margaret Whitmore, whom my mother had specifically mentioned, the Ashfords, who had been family friends for over 20 years, the Sterlings, who were major donors at my parents' church, all the people whose opinions my parents valued more than their own daughter's happiness. I sent out elegant invitations describing the dinner as a celebration of family reconciliation and mentioned that my parents were excited to finally meet their son-in-law properly and share in our joy. The irony was delicious. They would get exactly what they wanted, just not the way they expected it. As I sealed the last invitation, I felt a sense of calm settle over me. For 2 years I had carried the pain of their rejection, wondering if I had made the right choice in marrying Marcus, questioning whether I was wrong to prioritize love over family approval. But seeing their transparent greed and manipulation had crystallized everything for me. They had taught me the most valuable lesson of my life, the difference between family and relatives. Marcus and his parents were my family. These people were just relatives who happened to share my DNA, and I owed them nothing more than the truth. The week leading up to the dinner party was a masterclass in manipulation from my parents' side. They called constantly, each conversation dripping with fake enthusiasm and transparent attempts to control the narrative of our reunion. "Darling," my mother gushed during one particularly nauseating phone call, "I am just so excited for everyone to meet Marcus properly. I have been telling all our friends what a wonderful young man he is, how successful his business has become. Everyone is so impressed that our daughter found such an ambitious husband." The revisionist history was breathtaking. This was the same woman who had called Marcus "that construction worker" with such disdain 2 years ago, who had told me I was throwing my life away by marrying him. Now she was taking credit for recognizing his worth all along. My father was equally shameless. He called Marcus directly to discuss business opportunities, suddenly interested in being a mentor and investor. "I have always believed in supporting family ventures," he told Marcus over the phone, apparently forgetting that he had refused to even acknowledge Marcus existed for the past 24 months. But the most revealing conversation happened when my mother called to discuss the dinner party guest list. She was clearly nervous about the number of people I had invited and tried to suggest we keep it small and intimate for our first family gathering. "I just think it might be overwhelming to have so many people witness our reunion," she said carefully. "Perhaps we could save the larger celebration for another time." I could hear the panic in her voice. She was smart enough to realize that having witnesses to their hypocrisy might not work in their favor, but she could not figure out how to back down without looking bad to the very people she was trying to impress. "Oh, Mother," I said sweetly, "but you have already told Margaret Whitmore how excited you are to introduce her to Marcus. And did not you mention to the Ashfords that you wanted them to see how proud you are of your daughter? It would be rude to uninvite them now." I was using her own social climbing tendencies against her. She had bragged to these people about our success and her role in it, and now she was trapped by her own lies. Meanwhile, I was building my own support network. Marcus's family was completely on board with my plan, understanding better than anyone how devastating my parents' rejection had been. Rosa Marcus's mother had seen me cry on their couch more times than I cared to count during those first few months of marriage, when the silence from my parents felt overwhelming. "Mija," she said to me in her heavily accented English, "you show them what real family looks like. They want to come back now because you have money, no. Real family stays when things are hard." Miguel Marcus's father was more direct. "They hurt my daughter," he said simply. "Now they learn what that costs." I also reached out to my college roommate Jessica, who had witnessed firsthand how my parents treated people they considered beneath them. She remembered the time they had been incredibly rude to her girlfriend because she worked as a waitress, and she was more than happy to help me document their pattern of classist behavior. "Are you kidding?" Jessica said when I told her about the dinner party plan. "After the way they treated Sarah just because she did not have money, I have been waiting years for someone to call them out on their bullshit." The most crucial ally, however, was someone I had not expected, Margaret Whitmore herself. 3 days before the dinner party, Margaret called me directly. I had known her peripherally through my parents for years, but we had never had a personal relationship. What she told me changed everything. "Seraphina, dear," she said in her refined voice, "I hope you do not mind me calling directly. Your mother has been talking quite a bit about your recent reconciliation, and I wanted to reach out personally." I braced myself for another lecture about forgiveness and family unity, but Margaret surprised me. "I was at your parents' house for book club about 6 months after your wedding," she continued. "Your mother was showing us photo albums, and when we reached pictures of you, she actually said, 'We do not speak to her anymore. She made her choice.' Patricia seemed almost proud of cutting you off like it was some sort of power move." My heart stopped. I had suspected my parents were telling people their version of events, but hearing it confirmed was still shocking. Margaret continued, "I remember thinking at the time how cold it seemed, especially since you had just gotten married. When she started calling recently to brag about your success and claiming she had always been supportive, I knew something was not right. I wanted you to know that some of us remember what really happened." This was the breakthrough I had not even known I was hoping for. Margaret was one of the most respected members of their social circle, someone whose opinion carried significant weight. Having her as a witness to their lies was more valuable than anything I could have planned. "Would you be willing to share that at the dinner party?" I asked carefully. "Oh, my dear," Margaret laughed, "I would not miss this for the world. Your parents have been insufferably smug lately, taking credit for your achievements while conveniently forgetting how they treated you. It is time someone reminded them that actions have consequences." As the dinner party approached, I could feel my parents getting more nervous. They called multiple times to confirm details, but were really trying to figure out what I was planning. My mother even suggested bringing a photographer to capture our beautiful reunion, which I politely declined. The night before the dinner, Marcus found me in our bedroom, organizing the printed screenshots and documentation I had prepared. The evidence was damning text messages where they called our marriage a mistake, voicemails where they refused to even acknowledge Marcus's name, emails where they told extended family members not to contact me anymore. "You know," Marcus said quietly, "part of me still wishes we could just forgive them and move on. I hate seeing you carry this pain." I looked up at this man who had been nothing but loyal and loving, who had never once made me feel like choosing him was a mistake, despite the price I had paid for that choice. "Marcus," I said, If we let them back in without consequences, what message does that send? That they can treat people however they want as long as they apologize when it benefits them, that their love is conditional based on bank account balances. He nodded slowly. You are right. I want you to be happy. I am happy, I said, and I meant it. I am happy with you, with our life, with the family we have built with your parents. But I am also angry, and I think that is okay. I am angry that they put their racism and classism above their love for me. I am angry that they missed our wedding because they cared more about what their friends would think than about my happiness. And I am angry that they think they can erase all of that hurt just because we turned out to be successful despite their abandonment. The documentation I had prepared told a story that went beyond just our personal situation. It revealed a pattern of behavior that had defined my entire childhood. The way my parents evaluated relationships based on social status and financial benefit, the way they treated service workers, and anyone they considered beneath them, the way they had raised me to believe that appearances mattered more than character. Tomorrow night, their carefully constructed image would crumble in front of the very people they had spent years trying to impress. And for the first time in 2 years, I felt like I was taking back my power. The dinner party was not just about revenge, it was about truth, accountability, and showing everyone exactly what kind of people my parents really were when the spotlight was not on them. The evening of the dinner party arrived with perfect weather, clear skies and a gentle breeze that made our backyard look like something from a magazine. I had spent hours preparing not just the food and decorations, but mentally rehearsing what I was about to expose. Marcus squeezed my hand as we watched the first guests arrive through our front window. My parents were the last to arrive, which was typical of their need to make an entrance. They pulled up in their BMW, both dressed to the nines and wearing smiles that looked painfully forced. I watched my mother survey our house with calculating eyes, probably estimating its value down to the last dollar. "Seraphina," my mother exclaimed as she swept through our front door, arms extended for a hug that felt completely foreign after 2 years of silence. "Oh, darling, your home is absolutely gorgeous. You have such wonderful taste." My father was more reserved, but equally fake in his enthusiasm. He shook Marcus's hand with what appeared to be genuine warmth, a complete 180 from the man who had once told me he would never accept Marcus into our family. "Marcus, good to see you again," he said, as if they were old friends catching up rather than two people who had been deliberately kept apart by his own prejudice. The first hour of the party went exactly as I had expected. My parents worked the room like seasoned politicians, regaling our guests with stories of how proud they had always been of Marcus and me, how they had always known we would be successful, how family was the most important thing in the world to them. I stood in the corner sipping wine and watching this performance with a mixture of disgust and fascination. These were Oscar-worthy performances, complete with tears in my mother's eyes, as she told Margaret Whitmore how emotional she had been at our wedding, a wedding she had refused to attend. We knew from the moment Patricia introduced Marcus to us that he was special. My father was telling the Ashfords. You can just tell when a young man has that drive, that determination. We could not be prouder of the empire he has built. Empire. The word made me want to laugh out loud. This from the man who had called Marcus's construction work manual labor with such disdain. But the most nauseating moment came when my mother pulled out her phone and started showing pictures to the other guests, pictures she claimed were from our wedding day. I stepped closer and realized with horror that she had somehow gotten photos from social media and was presenting them as if she had been there, as if she had been part of our special day. "Oh, here is Marcus walking Seraphina down the aisle," she said to a captivated audience. I was so emotional I could barely take pictures, but thank goodness someone captured this moment. That was when I knew it was time. "Actually, Mother," I said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "that picture was taken by Marcus's cousin because you were not there. In fact, Marcus's father walked me down the aisle because mine refused to attend." The room went silent. My mother's face drained of color, but she tried to laugh it off. "Oh, sweetheart, do not be dramatic. We were there in spirit, and that is what matters." "No," I said, pulling out my phone. "You were not there in any way. In fact, let me share with everyone exactly where you were and what you were doing on my wedding day." I had prepared for this moment. I pulled up the Facebook post my mother had made on our wedding day, a post about their wine-tasting trip to Napa Valley, complete with photos of them toasting at a fancy restaurant while I was getting married 200 miles away. "This is where my parents were on my wedding day," I announced, showing the phone around the room. "Having a lovely time in wine country while their daughter got married without them," my father tried to interject. "Now, Seraphina, let us not rehash old disagreements in front of our friends." "Our friends," I repeated. "These people are not my friends, Father. They are your friends, people you care more about impressing than you ever cared about your own daughter's happiness." I walked to our entertainment center and pulled out the folder I had prepared. Since we are all here celebrating family and reconciliation, I thought everyone should know the real story of why my parents are suddenly interested in having a relationship with me. The first document I showed them was a printout of text messages from 2 years ago. I read them aloud. "You are making the biggest mistake of your life marrying that man. We will not be part of this embarrassment. Do not contact us until you come to your senses." My mother was frantically trying to signal me to stop, but there was no going back now. "Here is another one." I continued pulling out more evidence. "This is a voicemail my father left me 3 days after my wedding. Seraphina, you have chosen that construction worker over your own family. We raised you better than this. Until you realize your mistake, you are no longer our daughter." The room was completely silent now. Margaret Whitmore was staring at my parents with undisguised shock. The Ashfords looked uncomfortable and confused. "But wait," I said, my voice getting stronger. "It gets better. Here are text messages from last month, right after they saw my new Porsche in the driveway." I read the messages in my mother's voice. "Darling, we have missed you so much. We realize we may have been too hasty. Marcus seems to be doing very well for himself. We would love to reconnect now that you have clearly found success. The timeline is fascinating." I continued addressing the room like I was giving a presentation at work. 2 years of complete silence while Marcus and I struggled to build our life without any family support. Then one sighting of an expensive car in our driveway, and suddenly they remember they have a daughter. My father stood up abruptly. "That is enough, Seraphina. You are embarrassing yourself and your family." "My family," I laughed. "You mean the family that disowned me for falling in love with a good man? Or are you talking about my real family? Marcus and his parents who loved and supported me when my biological relatives abandoned me?" I turned to address the guests directly. "I want everyone here to understand something. These people you have been listening to tonight, who have been taking credit for my success and claiming they always supported my marriage, they cut me off completely for 2 years. Not because Marcus was a bad person, not because he treated me poorly, but because he was not white and did not come from money." The accusations hung in the air like smoke. Several guests were already reaching for their purses, clearly ready to leave this increasingly uncomfortable situation. Margaret Whitmore, bless her heart, chose that moment to speak up. "Patricia," she said quietly, "I remember you telling book club that you did not speak to Seraphina anymore because she had made her choice. You seemed quite proud of cutting her off." My mother's carefully constructed facade finally cracked completely. "That is, I was emotional. We all say things we do not mean when we are upset." "For 2 years," I asked. "You did not mean it for 2 entire years, through my birthday, through holidays, through every milestone in my life." The aftermath of my revelation was swift and devastating for my parents. Within minutes, the dinner party had transformed from a celebration into a wake for their social reputation. I watched as 20 years of carefully cultivated relationships crumbled in real time. The Ashfords were the first to leave mumbling polite excuses about an early morning commitment. But as they gathered their coats, I heard Mrs. Ashford whisper to her husband, "I cannot believe Patricia lied to us about supporting the wedding. Remember how smug she was about cutting Seraphina off." The Sterlings followed quickly behind their goodbye, noticeably cool toward my parents. Margaret Whitmore, however, lingered. She approached my parents directly. her voice carrying the authority of someone who had been a social leader in their circle for decades. "Patricia Richard," she said with icy politeness, "I think you should know that this behavior reflects poorly on all of us who considered you friends. The way you treated your daughter and then lied about it to save face is frankly despicable." My mother tried one last desperate attempt at damage control. "Margaret, you have to understand we were protecting our family's reputation. The marriage seemed so sudden, so—" "So what, Patricia?" Margaret interrupted. "Interracial working class. What exactly were you protecting your reputation from?" The silence that followed was deafening. My father, for perhaps the first time in his life, seemed to have no words. The mask had slipped completely, and everyone could see the ugly truth underneath. As the last guest filed out, my parents stood alone in our living room, their carefully planned comeback in ruins. The house that had been filled with laughter and conversation just hours earlier now felt hollow and cold. "Well," my father said finally, his voice tight with controlled rage, "I hope you are satisfied. You have destroyed 20 years of friendships tonight." "I destroyed them?" I asked incredulously. "I simply told the truth about your behavior. If that destroyed your friendships, maybe the problem is not with me." My mother was crying now, but they were tears of frustration and embarrassment, not genuine remorse. "How could you humiliate us like this, Seraphina? We are your parents. We came here to make amends." "You came here to take credit for success you had nothing to do with," I corrected her. "You came here because you saw dollar signs and thought you could rewrite history. But you cannot erase 2 years of silence just because it is convenient for you now." Marcus had been quietly cleaning up during this exchange, but now he stepped forward. His voice was calm but firm when he spoke. "Mr. and Mrs. Harrison," he said, using their formal names rather than the family titles they had been pushing all evening. "I want you to know that Seraphina cried herself to sleep more nights than I can count during our first year of marriage because of your rejection. She questioned whether she had made the right choice, whether love was worth losing her family." My mother looked stricken. "Marcus, we never meant—" "Yes, you did," he interrupted, and I had never heard him speak so directly to anyone. "You meant every word. You told her she was throwing her life away. You said I was beneath your family. You made it clear that your love for her was conditional on her making choices you approved of." He paused, letting that sink in before continuing. "But here is what you missed while you were busy protecting your reputation. Seraphina and I built something beautiful together. We bought this house, we grew my business, we created a life filled with love and respect and genuine partnership. And we did it all without you." My father's face was red with anger. "That construction company would be nothing without the connections we could have provided. You should be grateful we are offering to help now." The arrogance was breathtaking, but it also revealed everything I needed to know. Even now, faced with the consequences of their behavior, they could not understand that their love and support should not have come with strings attached. "Get out," I said quietly. "Seraphina," my mother started. "Get out of my house," I repeated louder this time. "You had 2 years to reach out with genuine remorse, 2 years to apologize for missing the most important day of my life, 2 years to acknowledge that you were wrong. Instead, you waited until you saw evidence of financial success before deciding I was worth your time again." My father moved toward the door, his pride apparently preventing him from making any further attempts at reconciliation. But my mother lingered, perhaps finally understanding the magnitude of what they had lost. "What if we had just made a mistake?" she asked softly. "What if we were wrong about Marcus, wrong about the marriage? Could not you forgive us for being human?" For a moment I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "Mother," I said, "the mistake was not having concerns about my marriage. Parents worry about their children's choices. That is normal and understandable. The mistake was cutting me off completely when I did not make the choice you wanted. The mistake was caring more about what your friends thought than about my happiness. And the biggest mistake was coming back now, not because you missed me or realized you were wrong, but because you wanted to take credit for my success." I walked to the front door and held it open. The woman who needed your love and support 2 years ago is gone. I do not need you anymore. I have Marcus. I have his family who actually knows what unconditional love looks like, and I have friends who value character over bank accounts." As they walked toward their car, my mother turned back one final time. "This will not end here, Seraphina. You cannot just cut us out forever." "Watch me," I replied, and closed the door. Through the window, I watched them sit in their car for several minutes before driving away. I imagined they were trying to figure out how to do damage control with their social circle, how to spin this story to minimize their humiliation. But the truth was already out there, spread among the very people whose opinions they valued most. Marcus came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. "How do you feel?" he asked. I leaned back against his chest and considered the question. I felt exhausted, relieved, sad, and strangely free all at the same time. "I feel like I finally stopped waiting for them to become the parents I needed them to be," I said. "I feel like I can finally move forward without carrying their rejection around with me." The house was quiet now, but it was a peaceful quiet rather than an empty one. We had each other. We had built something real together, and we had proven that family is not about blood relations, but about the people who choose to love and support you unconditionally. Tomorrow, I knew, would bring phone calls from mutual acquaintances wanting to know what had really happened. The story would spread through their social circle like wildfire, and my parents would have to face the consequences of their choices in a very public way. But tonight, I was exactly where I belonged, with the man who had never made me choose between love and family, because he understood they should be the same thing. 6 months after the dinner party disaster, my life had transformed in ways I never could have imagined. The immediate aftermath was brutal for my parents, exactly as brutal as they deserved. Within a week, Margaret Whitmore had shared the real story with half the country club, and my parents found themselves slowly but surely frozen out of the social circles they had spent decades cultivating. The Ashfords stopped including them in dinner parties. The Sterlings withdrew their invitation to their annual charity gala. Even their church friends began treating them with polite but noticeable distance. When you build your entire identity around appearances and social status, losing that foundation is devastating. My mother called exactly once after the dinner party about 3 weeks later. Her voice was small and defeated when she left a voicemail asking if we could talk privately without all the drama. I deleted the message without returning the call. The time for private conversations had passed when they chose public humiliation over private accountability, but the most beautiful part of this whole experience was discovering what real family looked like when the fake family was finally out of the picture. Rosa and Miguel Marcus's parents officially adopted me in every way that mattered. Rosa started calling me Mija, my daughter, and Miguel walked me down the aisle at our first anniversary vow renewal ceremony, which we held in our backyard with only the people who truly loved and supported us. "Seraphina," Rosa said to me one evening as we cooked dinner together in their kitchen, "I watch you become stronger every day. Your parents, they gave you life, but they did not give you love. Real love does not have conditions." She was right. The love I had grown up with was conditional, transactional, based on my ability to reflect well on their image. The love I had found with Marcus and his family was steady, unconditional, based on who I was as a person, rather than what I could do for their reputation. Marcus's business continued to thrive partly because genuine word-of-mouth recommendations meant more than any connections my father could have provided. Clients respected Marcus because he delivered quality work on time and treated everyone with dignity, from the wealthiest property developers to the day laborers on his construction sites. His success was built on character, not connections. We also made the decision to start our own family. When I found out I was pregnant 8 months after the dinner party, I felt nothing but joy. There was no anxiety about whether my parents would be good grandparents, no worry about explaining complicated family dynamics to a child. Our baby would grow up surrounded by love from people who understood that family is about commitment and care, not blood and obligation. The pregnancy announcement brought one final attempt from my parents to insert themselves back into my life. They had somehow found out through mutual acquaintances, and my mother showed up at my office one afternoon, probably hoping to catch me off guard. "Seraphina," she said, looking older and more tired than I remembered. "I heard about the baby. Congratulations." I looked at this woman who had given birth to me, but had never really been my mother, and felt nothing but pity. "Thank you," I said politely. "I was hoping," she continued, "that maybe this could be a fresh start for us. A baby changes everything. Surely you want your child to know their grandparents." The audacity was still breathtaking, even after all this time. She had missed my wedding, ignored me for 2 years, tried to use my success for her own gain, and now she wanted access to my child, as if nothing had happened. "My child will know their grandparents," I said calmly. "Rosa and Miguel are wonderful grandparents who have already started preparing the nursery in their house. They understand what it means to love unconditionally." I watched her face crumple as the full weight of her choices finally hit her. She had gambled her relationship with me on the assumption that blood ties would always bring me back, that I would eventually need them more than they needed me. She had lost that bet spectacularly. "I made mistakes," she whispered. "But I am still your mother." "No," I said firmly. "You are the woman who gave birth to me, but Rosa Rodriguez is my mother now. She earned that title by showing up, by supporting my choices, by loving me when loving me was not convenient or profitable for her." That was the last time I saw either of my biological parents. I heard through the grapevine that they eventually moved to a retirement community in Florida, probably tired of facing the social consequences of their behavior in a town where everyone knew the truth about how they had treated their daughter. As I write this, my daughter Emma is 2 years old, and she is growing up in a house filled with laughter, respect, and unconditional love. She calls Rosa and Miguel abuela and abuelo, and they spoil her shamelessly. She knows she is loved for exactly who she is, not for what she might become or achieve. Marcus and I have built something beautiful together, not just financially but emotionally and spiritually. We have proven that love is stronger than prejudice, that character matters more than connections, and that the family you choose is often more meaningful than the family you are born into. Sometimes people ask me if I regret exposing my parents so publicly, if I wish I had handled things differently. The answer is absolutely not. They spent 2 years teaching me that their love came with conditions, that their acceptance depended on my compliance with their prejudices. The dinner party simply revealed publicly what they had already shown me privately, that they were not the parents I deserved, and I was not obligated to pretend otherwise. The most important lesson I learned from this whole experience is that you cannot force people to love you the way you need to be loved, but you can choose to surround yourself with people who do. You cannot change other people's hearts, but you can protect your own by setting boundaries with those who have proven they will hurt you when it serves their interests. My story is not really about revenge, though I know that is how it started. It is about recognizing your worth and refusing to accept less than you deserve from anyone, including family members. It is about understanding that some relationships are not worth saving, and that is okay. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from people who treat love like a business transaction. Have you ever had to choose between family approval and your own happiness? Have you experienced the heartbreak of realizing that people you thought loved you unconditionally actually had a whole list of conditions you never knew about? Drop a comment and share your story. I know I am not the only one who has learned that blood does not always make family. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe, because I believe we all deserve to hear stories about people who chose love over fear, who built their own families when the ones they were born into failed them. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I hope it reminds you that you deserve people in your life who celebrate your happiness instead of punishing you for it. Remember, the best revenge is not revenge at all. It is building a life so beautiful that you forget why you needed revenge in the first place.